Picture yourself at the center of a conflict. Your pulse is through the roof, tension is rising, and the person across from you is deliberately distorting the facts and pressing every sensitive point they know. In this moment, an almost irresistible urge rises up inside you to explode, to say everything that has been building, to make them feel the full force of it. But this is precisely the moment you must stop. Your emotional outburst is exactly what they are after. They want to turn the conversation into chaos, to collect evidence of your instability, and to point at your reaction as proof that they were right all along. 5 centuries ago, Niccolò Machiavelli articulated a principle that most people today still cannot fully grasp. The person who controls their emotions controls the entire course of the exchange, not merely winning arguments, but rendering the very act of arguing pointless. Think of the moments after a fight when you replay the perfect comeback in your head. In that moment, you had already lost, not because your argument was weak, but because you accepted the rules of their game and fought on their terrain. Machiavelli never wasted time justifying himself to fools or prejudiced people, and he certainly never handed his opponents emotional ammunition to use against him. Instead of loud proclamations, he relied on something far more formidable: strategic silence and calibrated responses. Most people believe victory belongs to whoever gets the last word, whoever speaks loudest, hits hardest, or delivers the sharpest insult. This is a profound mistake. True triumph is the ability to preserve your dignity and strengthen your reputation, making your opponent look foolish without ever raising your voice. That is what real power looks like. In the next few minutes, I will walk you through 6 tactical tools drawn from Machiavelli's philosophy, tools that allow you to diffuse any conflict instantly, not through brute force, but through precision, saying exactly what needs to be said to achieve the objective, and not a word more. This is not a lesson in etiquette, and it is not about appearing noble for the sake of moral high ground. This is pure, pragmatic strategy, dominance through discipline. The goal is to become the kind of person others think twice about provoking, someone who simply does not respond the way provocations expect. You are here because you are tired of being at the mercy of circumstances, tired of regretting what you said, tired of replaying failed conversations on an endless loop. Your goal is to become untouchable, to be 3 steps ahead at all times, so that your opponent already senses their defeat before the fight has even properly begun. Tactic 1. The Benevolent Spotlight. When people come under attack, the instinctive response is to defend, to explain their motives, to prove their innocence, to justify themselves. This is the classic trap. The very act of defending confirms that the accusation has substance and that you feel you owe an explanation. The moment you step into that defensive posture, you have accepted their framing of the situation and handed them control. Machiavelli understood this clearly. The one who asks the questions owns the power in any exchange. Your task is to redirect the spotlight from yourself onto your opponent, but to do it wearing the expression of sincere concern and interest, completely reversing the direction of the attack. Here is how it works in practice. Someone throws an aggressive accusation at you. You're selfish. You only ever think about yourself. The instinctive reply is to push back. That's not true, followed by a list of counterexamples. But this is the weak path, and it is exactly the script they were expecting. Instead, try, "It sounds like something is really troubling you. Tell me what's actually going on." Notice what just happened. You did not deny the accusation. You did not defend yourself. You instantly stepped out of the defendant's seat and into the position of a calm, attentive observer. You transformed their weapon into a request for help. Now the aggressor is stuck. Continuing the attack will look unhinged, and if they answer your question, they're forced to abandon aggression and hand the direction of the conversation over to you. The essence of the benevolent spotlight is to return the attention to the attacker while projecting the image of maturity and emotional intelligence. If you are publicly accused of arrogance, that everything you do is driven by an inflated ego, respond calmly. "I can hear real frustration in what you're saying. Help me understand where it's coming from so we can actually work through this." You have not admitted guilt, you have not entered a debate, but you have made them explain themselves while you remain the composed, unshakable presence in the room. Machiavelli argued that appearing virtuous is often more valuable than being virtuous, and nothing reinforces that image more effectively than responding to aggression with the appearance of compassion. Let's be clear, this is not genuine empathy. It's cold calculation dressed as humanity with one objective: to completely disarm the other person. You are not asking questions because you care about their feelings. You are asking because continuing to attack you in that situation makes them look petty, while you occupy the dominant position without giving anyone a single reason to accuse you of hostility. This tactic works in any conflict where someone is trying to provoke an emotional reaction. If someone challenges you publicly, interesting perspective, what exactly led you to that conclusion? If someone tries to humiliate you, you seem very emotionally invested in this. What's really going on? If someone attacks your character directly, I can see this is heated for you. Walk me through exactly what it is that upset you. Every time you apply this approach, the same thing happens. You refuse to play their script and simultaneously make them look unreasonable. The outcome always works in your favor. The attacker either backs down or, by pressing harder, discredits themselves completely.
Tactic 2. The dead end. Some people do not want resolution. They want conflict. They feed on drama, and they will never stop as long as you keep supplying them with material. For exactly this type of person, Machiavelli offered a simple but brutally effective solution: give them absolutely nothing to work with. The mechanics of this tactic are straightforward. Respond with something so brief and emotionally neutral that the conflict has no ground left to develop on. When someone bombards you with accusations, you're irresponsible, you have no respect for anyone, you do not explain yourself, you do not argue. You simply say, "Okay." This produces cognitive dissonance in the aggressor. They prepared ammunition and expected resistance. Instead, they hit a wall of absolute emptiness. Where is the argument? Where is the satisfaction of the fight? It does not exist because you severed the momentum of the conflict in a single word, calmly, without passive aggression. Machiavelli understood that sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all, and the best battle is the one you simply did not show up to. There are variations of this technique. To an accusation, "I understand that's how you feel," acknowledging the emotion without conceding the point. To an insult, an indifferent, "if that's what you think." To a provocation, a flat, "that's one perspective." You are not engaging. You are not validating the complaint. You are not attempting to convince anyone of anything. You are closing the door in the provocateur's face. The secret to making the dead end work is iron discipline. Silence in response to an attack goes against every natural reflex we have, but the ability to endure that discomfort, to suppress the urge to justify yourself, to refuse to enter the game, is what makes you completely immune to manipulation. While your opponent is seething with frustration, desperately trying to get a reaction out of you, you are preserving your composure, your energy, and your time. This technique is especially powerful in public settings. When someone tries to create a scene and you give no reaction whatsoever, the performance dies on the spot. The aggressor looks pathetic, grasping for an audience response that never comes. Your detached calm cuts deeper than any word could. Tactic 3. The analytical pause. In the art of conflict, haste is frequently the primary cause of defeat. When accusations are thrown at you, words carefully chosen to cut at the most vulnerable points, the brain reflexively demands an immediate response. This is pure biology, an ancient survival instinct that mobilizes the nervous system for fight or flight in a fraction of a second. Machiavelli survived the ruthless political intrigues of the Renaissance not through impulsive action, but through his ability to think several moves ahead. The analytical pause is built on exactly this principle. It gives you the invaluable seconds needed to prepare a strategically sound response instead of an emotional collapse. The mechanics of this tactic are simple but extraordinarily effective. When someone says something designed to knock you off balance, make a deliberate pause and say calmly, That's interesting. Give me a moment to think about what you've said. In that moment, something remarkable happens. You literally interrupt the automatic neural chain between stimulus and reaction, halting the emotional hijacking of your mind. This brief stillness allows the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, to come back online, returning your capacity to act from intelligence rather than impulse. You also fundamentally alter the power dynamic of the exchange. The attacker expected confusion, defensiveness, or anger. Instead, you are treating their provocation as a complex chess problem requiring calm analysis, elevating yourself above the emotion of the moment. Your silence creates a palpable tension. The opponent becomes uncomfortable in the space of waiting, and now it is not them but you who controls the pace and rhythm of the conversation entirely. In practice, someone accuses you of incompetence or a serious mistake. Instead of immediately denying everything and going on the offensive, you pause, count silently to 3, and invite them to explain precisely what, in their view, went wrong. By doing this, you create space between the stimulus and the response, the buffer zone where your power over the situation is born. This is something most people in arguments never do. The method works in any conditions. Even when every instinct is telling you to respond right now, force yourself to slow down and let strategic thinking catch up with the emotional. Tell them you want to make sure you understand the complaint correctly before responding. Control of the speed of the dialogue is the key to winning it. But the true power of the analytical pause is not only in the external effect, it is in the deep internal work you are conducting during those seconds of silence. You are not merely calming down, you are building a strategy. You are asking yourself, what does this person actually want? Which response, engagement or cold indifference, will hit them harder? Is this conflict even worth your energy, or would it be smarter to redirect it to a dead end and close it down as quickly as possible? When you finally speak, your words come from a position of strength and deliberate choice, not from fear or the compulsion to defend yourself. The people around you will instinctively respect someone who absorbs a verbal blow without losing composure, because it signals an inner solidity that manipulation cannot reach.
Tactic 4. The agreement trap. This is perhaps the most devilishly subtle technique in the Machiavellian playbook. When someone attacks you, the last thing they expect is agreement. Their entire script is built on anticipating your resistance, your denial, your fierce counterattack. Your move is to agree with the grain of truth that may exist in their words, but to do it in a way that simultaneously dismantles their central argument. This is one of the most sophisticated maneuvers in any verbal confrontation. Imagine someone says, "You are impossibly stubborn and you never admit when you're wrong." Using the agreement trap, you respond calmly, "You're absolutely right. I can be stubborn, especially when it comes to my principles. So help me understand specifically where you think I'm wrong right now." You have disarmed the emotional attack by accepting the label they attach to you, then immediately turn the situation around and force them to produce facts and reasoning, rather than simply hurling insults. This is psychological judo, using the attacker's own momentum against them. If someone says you never listen and always do things your way, you acknowledge that yes, you do have a clear vision of how things should work, and that is a deliberate position, and then calmly ask which specific opinion of theirs you failed to consider. If I genuinely missed something important in what you said, I'm willing to hear it again. The principle is this: you agree with the surface-level accusation, but reframe it from a flaw into a character trait, and then demand specifics. In most cases, the attacker cannot provide them, because their attack was built on emotion, not evidence. When they come up empty, they look foolish. You look like the voice of reason. Machiavelli wrote that the lion is helpless against traps, and the fox is helpless against wolves. So one must be a fox to recognize the snare, and the lion to frighten off the wolves. The agreement trap is pure fox strategy. You see the threat to your ego, and instead of walking into it, you sidestep it with grace. The secret of its effectiveness lies in the nature of human arguments. People operate from emotion, not logic. Your task is to change the rules of the game. By conceding the emotional dimension of the complaint, but demanding logical precision, you shift the dialogue out of their comfort zone and onto the field of rational thinking, where you hold control. This tactic requires a certain maturity. You need to be secure enough that criticism does not destabilize your self-worth. Agreeing with part of a statement is not surrender, it is strategy. If someone calls you arrogant and you calmly ask what specifically gave them that impression, you have won without landing a single blow. The technique works because any argument requires resistance in order for the attacker to keep escalating. The moment you stop resisting and redirect the energy, the entire structure of the conflict collapses. They arrived ready for war, they were met with understanding and clarifying questions. You are the reasonable person open to dialogue. They are the aggressor attacking without justification. The verdict writes itself. Tactic 5. Exposing the intention. Most arguments are not actually about what is being said. Criticism of your character frequently reflects the internal struggles of the person doing the criticizing. Attacks on your approach may simply be an attempt to assert dominance. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Stated reasons rarely match real motives, and the ability to see through the performance confers an enormous advantage. When you identify and name the hidden motive behind an attack, you don't just end the argument, you prevent it from continuing at all. This is a surgically precise instrument. The principle is to stop reacting to the surface-level complaint and instead name the emotion driving it, as though you were lifting a curtain. It is critical to do this without hostility, with the icy calm of an observer who sees the game in its entirety and has chosen not to play. If someone asks, "Why do you always act like you know everything?" Instead of defending yourself, ask, "It sounds like you felt that your perspective isn't being valued here. Is that actually what's going on?" You are bypassing the accusation entirely and addressing the emotional core, forcing them to either acknowledge the real issue and shift to something constructive, or to escalate their aggression, which in either case puts you in the stronger position. Another example, someone says, "You've changed. You're not the person I knew." The response using this tactic, "It sounds like my growth has made you uncomfortable. Is that accurate?" You are naming the thing directly, refusing to apologize for your own development, not defending yourself, simply holding up a mirror. This approach transforms the attack into an opportunity to address the real problem, and in doing so demonstrates that what was being accused says far more about the attacker's insecurity than about your behavior. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the necessity of seeing through masks and identifying people's true motives, because real power is born from the gap between what is said and what is actually wanted. When you apply this tactic, you demonstrate exactly that level of perception. You show the other person that your gaze reaches well below the surface of their words, that you understand the rules of the game, and you have no interest in participating in a cheap puppet show. Your attention is not on the puppet, but on the hands pulling the strings. This requires two things: a well-developed emotional intelligence to accurately read what is actually happening beneath the words, and the courage to name it plainly without hiding behind diplomatic euphemisms. When you do this precisely and at the right moment, the effect is like defusing a bomb. The tension drops instantly. The conflict dissolves because you have removed the false target and addressed the actual problem. It is impossible to continue attacking over trivialities once you have calmly named the fear or sense of threat driving the behavior. It is impossible to keep assaulting someone's character once the real need underneath, the need to feel significant by diminishing you, has been exposed. The mask falls. The pretense on which all manipulation depends disappears.
Tactic 6. Expressed disappointment. This final tactic has nothing to do with anger, counter-aggression, or self-defense. It is strategic, deliberate withdrawal of your respect, and it carries a specific psychological weight that anger never can. History demonstrates that people fear the loss of standing in another's eyes far more than open confrontation. When you calmly communicate that someone's behavior has not made you angry but has genuinely disappointed you, it strikes at their self-regard in an entirely different way and restructures the entire power dynamic. Anger always implies that the other person still has power over your emotions, that they got to you. Disappointment carries an entirely different message. You expected a certain standard and they failed to meet even the baseline of decency. Anger says, "You hurt me." Disappointment says, coldly and quietly, "You turned out to be smaller than I thought you were." Picture this. Someone continues to provoke you despite your restraint. Instead of a reactive outburst, you say with complete composure, "I'm genuinely disappointed in how you've chosen to handle this. I expected more from you." Then you disengage entirely. No insults, no threats. Simply a statement that they have dropped in your estimation. This lands with particular force because the aggressor believed they were attacking an equal. Your response reveals that they are operating from a lower level. If someone tries to publicly undermine your credibility or betrays your trust, a quiet remark that you had considered them a person of integrity places a mark on them that does not wash off easily. You're not asking them to change. You are simply noting, aloud, that they have revealed their true character, and what you see is nothing but regret. Machiavelli wrote about the necessity of preserving dignity above all else, and composed disappointment is the highest expression of that principle. You are not descending into the mud to fight your opponent there. You are simply observing that they are in the mud, while you remain above it. There is one critical nuance, however. This cannot be a performance deployed while you are inwardly seething. The effect only works when the words come from a genuine sense of self-worth and the high standards you hold for yourself and others equally. And once you have expressed it, real consequences must follow. You cannot announce the loss of respect and then continue exactly as before. Disappointment requires action, even if that action is simply a reduction in the emotional investment you bring to that relationship. This is, in effect, a nuclear option in communication, one that often permanently alters the previous level of trust and fundamentally changes how a person perceives you. Deploy it when the other tools have been exhausted and you want to hold up a mirror to the aggressor before walking away. You're not angry that your expectations were not met. You are simply noting it, adjusting accordingly, and curating your world accordingly. The operating principle: my standards do not move. Conclusion: the architecture of unshakable power. We have covered 6 strategic tools capable of diffusing any conflict, not through volume, not through aggression, not through blind persistence, but through composure and the ability to think several moves ahead. In your arsenal, you now have the benevolent spotlight, the dead end, the analytical pause, the agreement trap, exposing the intention, and expressed disappointment. Each most effective in its own context and at its own moment. But mastering these tools requires something most people lack: the iron discipline to control your own reactions in the exact moments when every instinct is screaming at you to strike back immediately. These techniques do not simply help you end arguments, they fundamentally change the mechanics of how people interact with you. When you consistently demonstrate this level of self-mastery, people stop testing you, they stop attempting to provoke you, and stop seeing you as a convenient target for manipulation or a willing participant in their dramas. You become untouchable, not through cold detachment, but because you have mastered the most difficult skill there is: the art of governing yourself. Niccolò Machiavelli devoted his life to studying the nature of power, and his greatest lesson was not about controlling others, it was about controlling your own mind. Because the person who cannot govern their emotions will inevitably become a puppet in the hands of those who know which strings to pull. Every method shared here is about reclaiming that control, making a conscious choice to refuse reactive behavior and instead selecting your own response, rather than allowing circumstances to select it for you. The next time someone tries to draw you into a pointless confrontation, do not follow the habitual script. Deliberately apply one of these tactics and observe how quickly the conflict extinguishes itself, starved of your emotional fuel. You will notice how much energy you have recovered, energy that was previously bled out in arguments you should never have entered. This is not conflict avoidance, this is conflict mastery. And mastery, as Machiavelli knew better than anyone, is what power actually looks like.